Welcome to the ITIL 4 Release Management Practice Sample Paper 1 recording from One World Training. First of all, we would like to acknowledge the copyrights of PeopleCert and AXELOS Limited, and also the copyright for the swirl logo. About One World Training. One World Training is a global training, business simulation, and training company having offices in the USA, the UK, the Netherlands, India, Malaysia, United Arab Emirates, South Africa, and many other countries globally. We provide training in several areas such as IT, business management, project management, ISO standards, GDPR, and many other topics for individuals as well as organizations. One World Training delivers courses in 5 different ways. 1, it can be public classroom based. 2, it can be online, which is virtual from your home or work. 3, e-learning or self-paced learning. 4, a mix of self-paced e-learning along with support when you need it. And 5, at your location on-site, that is for private and government organizations. We are authorized and endorsed by leading global professional bodies. And on this slide, you can see some of the logos for the trainings that we offer and also some of the bodies that we are endorsed by. There are 2 sample papers, official sample papers from PeopleCert. This is the first one. There is also a separate recording for paper 2. There will be 20 questions in each of these papers. It's a 30-minute exam, the real exam that is. However, this being a sample, you can go at your own pace. We also have an online simulation for the same sample paper using a timer. And we also have provided in your e-learning access the PDFs for this sample paper and a separate PDF for the answers descriptions. So we have 3 modes of learning for you. 1, through the PDFs at your own pace. 2, using this recording. 3, using the online simulation. There will be 20 questions. It's a 30-minute exam. Each question is worth 1 mark. There is no negative marking, and there is only 1 correct answer per question. In the exam, you need to answer at least 13 questions correctly to pass the exam. I will be taking you through these 20 questions one by one, and after reading out each question, I will be pausing momentarily for you to think about the answer and reflect on the answer before I reveal and explain the answer. For some of the answers, I will also take you to the practice guide for the release management, wherein I can show you evidence from a certain table that that was indeed the correct answer. So let's begin. This is question number 1. This is about the purpose of the practice. So the question is, what is the purpose of the release management practice? And the answer options are as follows: enabling users to make better use of digital products. That was A. Option B, creating release models aligned to release types. C, allowing users to choose which versions of service to use. D, working with third parties to develop products. It should be a simple question regarding the purpose of the practice, but do watch out, be cautious to delineate and figure out the correct answer. So option A, enabling users to make better use of digital products. This seems to be fine, because the purpose of the practice is to make new and changed services and features available for use. And which means after the initial onboarding is done, the practice will support the delivery of service updates, which is important for the success of service delivery and consumption. So that's what is hinted with this first sentence, enabling users to make better use of digital products through the updates from time to time. So that could be the correct answer. Let's go to B and check it out. Creating release models aligned to release types. This is actually an activity from this practice, not the actual purpose, because release models are applicable for each type of product, because organizations have different products, and also when organizations have products from different architectures, then we need different release management approaches as well. So there is a release management approach for different product architectures and release management model or release model for each product based on the approach for that product architecture. So B would be incorrect. Option C, allowing users to choose which versions of service to use. This is more about the pull approach in which it allows the users to decide whether they want to use a certain version or stick to the older one or not to use the service at all. So this is not the purpose of the practice. Then option D, working with the third parties to develop products. This can be an activity within this practice, but it is not the purpose of the practice. And third parties are quite likely in release management because very few services are delivered using only an organization's own resources. Organizations depend quite a lot on services from outside the organization by third parties. Therefore, the correct answer would be A, enabling users to make better use of digital products. We move on to the second question. A service provider wants to check that the release management practice is fulfilling its purpose. What evidence should the service provider look for? A, aligned roles among the release management, deployment management, and change enablement practices. B, predefined scripts which can be used for the automation of checking whether releases have completed successfully. C, release models which take into account the characteristics of the organization's services and products. Or D, value streams are defined to support the release management practice. The phrase fulfilling its purpose should give you a clue. And just a hint there, it is the practice success factors which together fulfill the purpose of a practice. And every practice in ITIL 4 has maybe 2, 3, or 4 different practice success factors. And together they fulfill the purpose of the practice. Option A, let's check out the answers. Aligning of the roles between the practices, this is definitely desirable, but it is not an evidence that the practice is fulfilling its purpose, because we need to look out the option which hints or reflects the practice success factors. Then also one thing about the roles in this practice, depending on the organization's approach to release management, the release manager role may be combined with the role of the change manager or the deployment manager and so on. Option B, predefined scripts which can be used. This is good automation for the practice, but again, it is not an evidence that the practice is fulfilling its purpose. We need to have the practice success factors in place. And this option B is particularly about the automation tools, such as this is particularly referring to the monitoring and event management tool set, which can verify whether the releases have completed successfully or not. Option C, release models which take into account. Now, this also is a good option. The release models should take into account the characteristics of the organization's services and products. In fact, one of the practice success factors for this practice is to define and agree approaches and models to follow for the release of new and changed services and service components. Therefore, C is definitely a good one. It can be the answer. And option D, value streams are defined to support the practice. Though we have the practice success factor that I just mentioned, and there's one more practice success factor, which is about ensuring effective release of services and service components in the context of the value streams and relationships, which is about the day-to-day life cycle of the release management practice. But it is this option D here is basically telling us that value streams are defined to support the practice. But it's the other way around. It is the practices which support the value streams and not that the value streams support the practice in ITIL. Therefore, D is also incorrect. And therefore, C would be the best one as mentioned earlier, because C reflects one of the practice success factors for the release management practice. And the PSF itself is phrased as follows: establishing and maintaining effective approaches and models for the release of new and changed services and service components. In fact, they need to be defined and agreed. Question number 3. A service provider wants to ensure it is maintaining effective approaches to the release of services. What is a key measure to apply to this? A, number and percentage of product teams following the agreed release models. B, the percentage of reviews of individual releases which received positive ratings from service consumers. C, the percentage of releases which did not result in service disruption for users. Or D, the number of releases which were implemented after the target implementation date. Note that the question is about the metric for maintaining effective approaches. And as we know, there is also another PSF which was about the release life cycle process, which is ensuring effective release of services and components in the value streams and service relationships. So you need to compare the metrics between the two and decide which of them is the metric related to the approaches. So first one, it is about the adoption of the release models, which is definitely a good one because one of the metrics for the PSF for the approaches is the adoption of the agreed approach to release management across the organization. Now, this also includes the models. Therefore, A would be correct. Let's look at option B. This is a metric related to the other practice success factor, which ensures the effective release of the services and the components. Similarly, C and D as well. Therefore, the only correct option here would be A. I would also like to take you to the release management practice guide, and let's take a look at the evidence in the practice guide. And you can access the practice guide either through your PeopleCert account login or through the Bookshelf app. The Bookshelf is more convenient because you can be offline and still have the practice guide viewed in it as long as you have downloaded it locally into the Bookshelf app. Whereas for the PeopleCert account, you need to be connected and to be logged in. So here, and the access to these to the practice guide is through your exam voucher. And there is a separate recording on how to book your exam and also obtain your practice guides using your exam voucher. And there's also another recording on how we can maintain your certification as well. I will talk about it a bit later on in this recording, towards the end of the recording. So table 2.2 key metrics of release management. And if you notice, the first PSF on the left column here is about the approaches. And you can see the second one here, adoption of the agreed approach to release management across the organization. Therefore, and whereas the other three options, answer options, were taken from the second PSF, the second entry in this table. Therefore, we are correct with that answer A. Question 4. A service provider defined several value streams for the delivery of new and changed services to customers. The key difference between the value streams is the level of automation. Which value stream is most likely to include release management activities? A, the service value stream which makes use of continuous delivery without continuous deployment. B, the service value stream which makes use of continuous integration but not continuous delivery or continuous deployment. C, the service value stream which makes use of continuous deployment without continuous delivery. Or D, the service value stream which makes use of continuous delivery and continuous deployment. First of all, to answer this question, we need to understand what is continuous delivery, continuous deployment. There's also another related agile and DevOps term, which is continuous integration. However, continuous integration is not listed among the answer choices, so we don't have to think about that. And also note in the question, the value stream here is about the delivery of new and changed services to customers. And this is where release management can come into picture as one of the practices in this value stream. And the question is, which value stream is most likely to include release management practice activities? Is it when it is just continuous integration or just continuous deployment or neither of them, or when both of them are present and happening? One thing we have to know from the practice guide is that release management becomes a separate step when organizations use continuous deployment. So, and along with the continuous delivery. And therefore, we see in option D the service value stream, which makes of continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Now, this is where the deployment happens first and followed by the release. Release as a separate step, rather than combining deployment and release into a single step or a single phase. So what happens here is, first the deployment occurs wherein new software versions, documents, and digital infrastructure are deployed or moved to live environments. In the ITIL terminology, deployment means moving a set of entities within a release package to the concerned environment, like a live staging, quality, or development environment. So deployment is done first and followed by a release where the release is made available, meaning the set of software, documents, infrastructure, etc. are made available to users, and that is called the release. And therefore, the release management practice will switch on the deployed services and components for the users. And this happens when there is continuous delivery capability, and then that capability is made use of by continuous deployment, wherein the deployments occur in an automated manner. Note the question is also about the automation. Whereas in the other options, in option A, there is no continuous deployment. And in option B, there is integration, but not delivery or deployment. And in option C, there is deployment, but not continuous delivery. So in those cases, release management can be combined along with the deployment management. So, and however, the question is about which value stream is most likely to include release management. Therefore, the best option would be D here. Yeah, because even in option B, there is a continuous integration. There can be some release management, but the deployment and release activities may be combined. And similarly, in option C is very unlikely. Just there is no continuous delivery capability, but continuous deployment is going on. That is not possible because continuous delivery capability is needed for continuous deployment to occur. Therefore, C would not be possible at all. And in option A, again, where there is delivery, but not deployment in a continuous manner, deployment and release may be combined together. Therefore, the question is also about the most likely. Therefore, option D would be the best answer here. So the question needs to be interpreted as if in which situation is release management done in a separate phase or as a separate step. Question number 5, what is a release model? A, an approach to the decision-making power of users over whether to accept a release. B, an approach to the release of a product within defined circumstances. C, an automated update of software versions in the live environment. Or D, an update to the service in the live environment. So during the exam, and also in the sample paper, you need to recollect the various terms, because generally the various answer choices would be connected to some term or another within the practice. So for example, here A is about the push-pull approach, wherein it's an approach to the decision-making power of users whether to accept a release. That is more like the pull approach where it happens. So that would be incorrect. That is not the definition of release model. And option B is a correct one, an approach to the release of a product within defined circumstances. It's a release model. And also note that even though for one product there would be one release model, it is sometimes possible that a single product may have multiple release models, because depending on whether the product is for an internal or external customer, or a corporate customer, or an individual customer, or for a specific market business, or is it a customized product, or it's an out-of-shelf, out-of-the-box product. So B is the answer there, but let's look at C and D as well. Option C is the definition of continuous deployment, wherein continuous deployment refers to the changes that go through the process and automatically put into production. And that requires continuous delivery capability for automation. And option D, however, in continuous delivery, though deployment is possible in a continuous non-stop way sort of, but a case-to-case decision is done based on the delivery capability, that whether to deploy manually or to deploy automatically. Option D, an update to a service in the live environment. This is a release because a release is a version of a service or any other configuration item or a collection of such items that is made available for use. So option B would be the correct answer. We have question number 6. Which of the following is an output of the release planning and coordination process? A, notifications to stakeholders about the status of the release. B, the pull-push attributes of the service features. C, the standard building blocks of the release products. Or D, documented agreements on the quality of the service. One more thing I would like to mention here, that the first 5 questions were about the basic concepts or the key concepts of the practice. The next 5 questions are related to the process and value streams, which means that 10 of the 20 questions are coming from the 2 initial chapters of the practice guide, the key concepts and the process and value streams chapters. So be thorough with these 2 sections and similarly the recordings for those 2 sections in your courseware. Because the remaining 10 questions from 11 until 20 onwards are about the other dimensions, such as organizations and people, information and technology, partners and suppliers, and also about the maturity model and the recommendations for the practice success. So allow me to think about the answer before I reveal it. The process in question is release planning and coordination. And option A is about the communications of the release, and A is correct. The notifications about the status of the release is one of the outputs of this release planning and coordination process, which is the release lifecycle process. The other process is about developing and improving the approaches and models. Option B, the pull-push attributes. This is an input, which is the release management models that might have some attributes of the service features. Then option C, the standard building blocks. This is also an input, which is the product architecture input to this process. And option D, documented agreements on the quality of the service. This is nothing but the service level agreements, which is an input to the other process, namely the release model development and improvement process. Therefore, A would be the correct one.